everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet my brand new pattern, round boho bag. It is so cool. I am so in love with this pattern. It measures about 12 by 12 inches, so it's a nice big bag. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to line your bag so that it stays nice and sturdy and your goodies don't come through the holes. Now, you can find the free crochet pattern down in the notes underneath this video. To make our round boho bag, you're going to need a few supplies. You're going to need some yarn, of course, and this is the yarn that I have chosen to use for my bag. It's called Red Heart Colorscape. It's an acrylic yarn. The color is called Munich, and it is a medium number 4 yarn. You're going to need 2 of these, or about 7 ounces of your choice of a medium weight number 4 yarn. Now, I chose this because I loved how it was a variegated and had a little bit of a boho look to it, and it's also extremely soft. But you can use any medium weight number 4 yarn that you have on hand. You're just going to need 7 ounces. I chose an acrylic. You can use cotton if you want to. You're going to need 4 buttons. We're going to be placing a button in the center of the bag, and that's because one of them is going to be used as the loop to close the bag, and then we're also going to place 1 button at each side where we attach the strap. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need your scissors, and you'll need a needle for weaving in those ends. At the end of the video, I'm also going to be showing you how to make a really simple lining for your bag. So you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm just using this simple cream color cotton, and I'll show you how to make that liner. You'll need fabric scissors, which need to be a little sturdier, of course, than just your regular scissors, and that's to cut the fabric. And then you'll need a regular needle and thread, and this is just your regular thread that you sew with. You do not have to have a sewing machine. You can, because it makes it go a little faster for the sewing of the outside of the liner, but you don't have to, and I'll show you how to do all of that. We're going to make the bag first, and then I'll show you how to add the liner at the end of the video. To make our bag, you're going to need to crochet 12 triangle grannies. We'll be using 6 for the front and 6 for the back of the bag. You can find this video and written pattern. I'll put that link down in the notes under the video, and you can also click that link right there. That will take you directly to the video on how to crochet the triangle granny. You need to make 12 and meet me back here. Once you have stitched 12 of the triangle grannies, I'm going to show you how to make your circles. This is one that I've already made, and I'll show you how to make the other one. Let's start with just 2 of the triangles. We're going to face them with their right sides together. We're going to join our yarn into one of the corners. There we go. And we'll just bring it up to the top. And what we're going to do is we're going to be stitching in the outside loops. So on this side it'll be the front loops, and on this side it'll be the back loops. So I'm going to bring my crochet hook to the outside loop of this one and the outside loop of this one. I'm going to pull a loop through, then pull that loop through the loop on my hook. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to skip the next 2 loops and go to the next 2. Stitch the outside of both sides, pull my loop through, pull that loop through the loop on my hook, and chain 1. And this is the way we're going to be joining our triangle squares, or our triangle grannies, together. We'll skip the next one and go to the next one and do the 2 outside loops in a slip stitch. Chain 1, skip 1. I want to make sure everything stays lined up. So we'll take our time. And another thing is you don't want these to be bunched up. You want them to lay nice and flatly. So I chained 1, skip 1. I'll go to the next 2 outside loops and stitch my slip stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, outside loops, slip stitch, and chain 1. Now this brings us to this chain 1 or chain 2 space, and so we're going to go in and stitch our slip stitch. We're going to chain 1, and before we do anything else, don't cut your yarn. I just want you to look at it. If you look on the inside, you'll see that those stitches are hidden, except for where we started, of course, and we can see that row of stitches that lay nicely up against each other. This is our front, and this is our back, where we stitched our slip stitches and chain 1. So there's our first 2 triangles together. Now we're going to take our third triangle. We're going to put the right sides together. We're going to go in this chain 2 space and grab that loop, pull it through, chain 1, and then repeat, working up this side what we did here. All right, so we'll go in the outside stitches, stitch a slip stitch, and chain 1. Skip the next, slip stitch in those outside stitches, and chain 1. Making sure that we're not going too tightly so that it puckers up, but also not too loosely, and keeping everything all lined up. There we go. Chain 1, skip 1, outside loops, slip stitch, chain 1, skip 1. Take a look at it, make sure it's not bunching up on you, make sure everything's lined up. All right, so now we're to that corner chain 2 space. We'll go in that corner, do that little slip stitch, chain 1, and we're going to cut our yarn. And we're going to tie off. Now I like to go ahead and weave in my ends as I go, but you don't have to if you prefer to do them all at the end. I just like to get it done and get it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in this end here by putting my needle or threading my yarn on my needle and making some stitches, going through fibers and stitches. All right, and then we have 3 together. So here's our 3 together, and here is another one that I did with 3 triangles together. We're going to put the right sides together with the outside facing out, and you'll know that because that's where your seams are. All right. We'll take our hook, we'll go in that corner, go through both of those triangle corners, and pull up our yarn. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to repeat what we were doing. We're just going to go all the way across. So again, we're going to go in the outside loops. We're going to stitch a slip stitch and chain 1. We'll skip the next stitch. Going in the outside loops, we'll stitch a slip stitch and chain 1. And again, make sure you're not pulling too tightly to pucker up your seam. You want to keep it nice and loose so that it lays nice. Make sure to keep all of your sides all lined up so that everything lays pretty. There we go. And now we're heading to the center. There we go. We want to make sure we go in that chain 2 space for the triangle on this side and stitch that slip stitch, chain 1. Then we're going to go in that center triangle and stitch our slip stitch. I almost tried to stitch a single crochet, chain 1, and then we'll go in this one, slip stitch and chain 1. So in the center we have those 3 chain 2 spaces of our 3 triangles on this side and that side, and all we're doing is hooking them together, slip stitch, chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1, and then we'll work across this one just like we did on all the other ones. Slip stitch, working on the outside stitches, and chain 1. Oh, and don't forget to skip 1 in between. Slip stitch, chain 1, skip 1, slip stitch, chain 1, skip 1, working across. And so this is how your bag should look at this point. We've got 6 together. Now, it will not lay perfectly flat. This is the style of this bag. It's going to be a little bit, I think the best word to call it is bunchy, and that's the way the bag is supposed to be. This is the back. This is the front. When you finish your last part of that stitching across, do not cut your yarn. I want you to do a row of single crochet working all the way around the bag, or all the way around the circle. All right, and this is also going to help the bag smooth out. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 2 single crochets in the chain 2 spaces, and then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets. Two single crochets in the chain 2 space, and 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets. And repeat. 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. Oops, try to do a double crochet. And 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets. And when you get this row finished, you'll notice the bag is laying much neater. All right, 2 single crochets and one, I keep wanting to do a double crochet, 1 single crochet in the 3 double crochets. This brings us to this corner where we've joined. You'll put 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. Move my string out of the way there. Then you'll go to this next chain 2 space and stitch 2 single crochets. And then you'll just continue repeating 1 single crochet in each of those 3 double crochets, and 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. 1 single crochet in those 3 double crochets, 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. All right, so this brings us again to our next seam. 2 single crochets in that chain 2 space. Then we'll move right over to this chain 2 space and stitch 2 single crochets. And then we'll repeat this, working all the way around the outside of our bag, and we'll join back over here to our first single crochet. I completed stitching a single crochet row all the way around the outside of this circle of 6 triangles. I have one already finished here as well. And what you're going to do, again, do not cut your yarn. We're going to put the 2 together, lining up the triangles. And the way the bag is stitched is we're only going to stitch the single crochet rows together with 1, 2, 3, 4 of our triangles, and we're going to leave the top open. That's going to be the opening of the bag so we can get inside our bag. All right, so we're going to put them together with the right sides facing out. All right, so this one needs to be turned over because we want the wrong side on the inside. So we're going to line them up, right sides facing out. That means all the seams are on the inside where we slip stitched them together. All right, so I've got my seams all lined up. I'm going to go here and here. I'm going to grab that loop, pull it across, and go ahead and do a little chain 1 to get us up on top. And then I'm going to stitch a single crochet in each stitch across, making sure I go front to back on both sides all the way around in the next 4 triangle ends. All right, so we'll go in to the next stitch and stitch a single crochet, and we'll do this all the way around. And again, we're only stitching in the next 4 triangle ends. The last 2 are going to be our bag opening. All right, so I'm stitching the front and the back together, and we're going through both loops on both sides, stitching single crochets. And we'll continue to stitch these single crochets, stitching our triangles together, working with just the first or the next 4 triangles. We're going to leave the last 2 triangle ends unworked. I have single crocheted from this corner through the 4 bottoms of the next 4 triangle squares, and I have this opening. And what we're going to do now is we're going to single crochet around the opening. So now we're going to single crochet on this side, and then we'll come back and single crochet on this side. And that's going to give us a nice sturdy opening. So I'll just go into just the front of the bag and stitch 1 single crochet in each of those single crochets. Only single crocheting through the front, not the back. Moving across the bag opening. I've stitched across the front of the bag opening, and now I'm going to move to the back, and I've stitched in my last stitch, and I'm going to go to the first single crochet there and just single crochet in each single crochet, moving across the back edge of the bag opening. I've stitched across the back as well. Now I'm going to join to the first single crochet on this side, and now we're going to tie off. We can go ahead and grab that needle and weave that in. So the body of the bag is now complete. And the next thing I'm going to show you how to add is that fun chained fringe. So here is our bag, here's our opening, and now we're going to add that fun chained trim or fringe. And what we're going to do is we're only going to add this fringe to the 2 center triangle bottoms. So here is our bag opening. We're going to skip this first bottom of this triangle, and we're going to join our yarn to this one. And we're going to chain 30 chains. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Now we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch. Then we'll slip stitch in the next stitch and chain 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. We'll slip stitch in the next stitch. Then we'll slip stitch in the next stitch and repeat. And this is how that fringe will look. All right, so chain 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Slip stitch in the next stitch, then slip stitch in the next stitch and repeat. And you're going to do this from here across this next triangle and then the next triangle here. And so the 2 center triangle bottoms will have this fun chained fringe. As you can see, I continued to make my chained fringe or trim, however you want to call it. It is a fringe, but it is chained. And I stitched from the bottom of this triangle to across to this triangle. So I'm just covering those 2 center triangles of my bag. So I stitched my last slip stitch, cut my yarn, tie off, and weave in my end. I love this fringe. I think it's just fun and different than just your basic fringe. And I love that it gives it a little bit of weight at the bottom of our bag. Alright, so I'm just going to weave this in real quick. We're going to make the handle by chaining a chain with 4 strands of our yarn. That can be a little bit difficult. And so what I do is I take 1 strand from the inside, 1 strand from the outside, and I just bring it along, because we want a pretty good sized handle. Let me move this out of the way for now. And then I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to make a slip knot. And if you want to use a larger hook, you can. I've got an N right here that's a 9mm. But if you don't have one, you don't have to. You can use your fingers, or you can go ahead and just loosely crochet with this one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to chain 50. You can see I'm pushing it along, moving it as I go. And we're going to chain 50 chains using 4 strands of our yarn to make our handle. So I've chained my 50 chains using 4 strands of my yarn, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. And now we're going to tie off and attach this to our bag. We want to attach it to the sides here where our bag opening is. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through, pull those loops, and then I'm going to go inside and pull that to the inside. All right, now it's right there in that center. This side has a loop, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that. We're going to take 2 strands, and we're going to go right back through the edge of that bag with just the 2 strands, and then we're going to tie a knot. We want this handle to stay secure. So I'm going to tie those 3 knots that I always tie, and if you want to, you can add, I just tied a 4th knot here. If you want to, you can add some fabric glue on that or some fray check, but I'm not, because I'm not worried about it coming off. All right, so let's go to the other side. We'll do the same thing. There we go. We'll grab those loops. There we go. Then we'll go inside. Get my hook through there because I'm using this big fat hook. There we go. I should have been using this one. Then we'll grab 2 strands, go through some of that edging there on the inside with just 2, and tie our knots. All right, and clip. So now our bag has a handle on it. It has this beautiful fringe, and we're going to make a button loop that's going to be long, and we're going to add our buttons to the center of our bag, and then we'll add a button to each side of the handle. All right, let's make our button loop. We're going to begin with a little bit longer of a tail because we're going to need that to attach it to the bag. So about, 6 or 8 inches. Let's make our slip knot, and we're going to chain 30 chains. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 30. We're going to count back 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're going to join with a slip stitch. And then we're going to chain 20. All right, so what we did is we chained 20, then we chained 10. We joined to that 10th, and this is our button loop, and then we chained 20. And we'll join to that first chain with a slip stitch. And then we'll cut a long tail as well. And this is our button loop for our bag. Let's grab our bag. There we go. Let's see, I think this will be the front. Just by looking at the fringe there, you want your fringe to look like it's on the front of your bag. And we're going to line this up with the center. This is the front, so we're going to attach it to the center of the back of the bag, okay? So we're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to go through that single crochet row there and bring it in. And we'll get the other one. We need one on each side there. There we go. And I want to kind of pull that chain just a little bit, just as close as we can get it without going too far. All right, because we want that chain to be all the way up to our bag. We don't want any of the string showing through on this side. Let me bring this down here. There we go. Then we'll cut that string. And this will be our button loop because we're going to put our button down here. I decided, since I'm using a dark button as contrast, I wanted to go ahead and use a dark yarn so that the button wouldn't have a light center. All right, so the first button we're going to attach is the button to the center of the bag. All right, so I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go across. I'm going to pull that inside. There we go. And then I'm going to make that loop. Make sure I leave enough back here. And I'm going to make a second loop just because I didn't want this button to come off. This button is what is going to hold the button loop on the bag and going to hold it closed. Okay. All right. So here's my big old button, and I just love these big wooden buttons. And when you sew your buttons onto yarn, knitted or crochet, you want to make sure that you're going through fibers. But also, let's make sure we're not going all the way through and closing our bag. We want to make sure we aren't going, to the other side. And so I'm going to pull that. And come up from the back, and I'm going to stitch this a couple of times because, like I said, this one's going to get more wear and tear than the others. This one isn't just decorative, it's going to get worked. Opening and closing our bag. And I am liking that I chose that brown yarn instead of using the matching yarn from the bag. All right, now I'm going to go in. And I'm going to tie that knot. And give it a good hard pull. Want to make it on there nice and snug. All right. Do my little twisty knot. I like to do this, especially on buttons. I don't know what this knot is called. I just like using it. I think it holds good. There we go. And so now the button for the button flap or tab is ready. Okay, so that's how that's going to look. And now I'm going to add a button to the side just to kind of help cover up where we added our side of our bag handle. Just go through a couple of times. Just going to snazzy it up a little bit. And again, we're going to tie some knots. And I like I keep saying this, I just love wooden buttons. And these dark ones are so pretty. And I think it adds a neat touch of pop to this bag. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add one to this side and one to the back. And then I'm going to show you how to quickly line your round bag. Our bag is finished, but sometimes a bag like this can be a little bit holey and also not hold its shape real well. And so if you make a liner, it will help with your things not falling out and also your bag holding its shape. All right, so let's take our bag. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay out two pieces of fabric. And I've already got mine cut out. But what you'll do is you'll lay out your fabric, string on there, and then you'll lay your bag out. Now, we don't want to line the fringe, of course. And so what I did is I pushed up my fringe like this. I laid out my two pieces of fabric, and then I just took with a red pen and I drew around that shape of my bag. Okay, you can see I had to kind of look at it and make sure it was rounded the way I want it to be. All right, then I went ahead and used my fabric scissors and just cut out the circle. Once your circle is cut out, you need to determine where your opening is. And so what I did is I set my bag down where my opening was. I lined it up with the lines. And then I made these two lines across here, and that told me I'm only going to stitch around the bottom. Now, when you do a circle, the truth is you can do this type of a liner for any size bag that's, an odd shape. Now, a square or a rectangle, you're going to have squares, but with the round bag or any like octagon or hexagon or any odd shaped bag, this is a really easy technique. All right, so we wrote around it, we cut it, we marked where our opening is, then we used our needle and thread, and what I usually do is I'll pin it with pins around, and I'll do a real quick basting stitch around. All right, and then once I get to the other end, I'll tie a knot. And then I'll stitch back over my basting stitches to make sure I've got a good seam. Now, if you have a sewing machine, pop this right on your sewing machine and you'll have it done in about 8 seconds. And make sure you do a serge or a zigzag edge. We can't do that, of course, because we are sewing by hand. And so that's why I did 2 rows of stitches. All right. The next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to clip your edges. Be very careful not to clip through your stitches. And when you're doing a round or curved edge, these edges will help when you pull it out and use it not to be too snug. Now, because we're doing a liner, we're not going to be turning it wrong side out, so it shouldn't be too much trouble on that area. But it's just good to do this so that it lays nicely inside your bag. All right, now the next thing you need to do is, once you've got it sewn and clipped, you need to grab your bag. Now, we're not making a pillow, so we're not going to turn it right side out. We're going to leave the wrong side out because we want the inside of our bag to be nice and neat inside. All right, so I'm just going to kind of roll it up, stick it in my bag, and then unfold the top. And you can kind of work it down in there how you want it. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the top edge to the opening of the bag. You'll probably want to grab a few straight pins to pin this to the bag. We want to take the edge, line it up to the edge, and we're going to fold it in about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and we're going to pin it on. This is the hardest part of adding your liner to the bag, is getting the top part in nice and neatly. And so what I suggest is when you're pinning, make sure you pin like right under that edge so your lining doesn't stick out at the top. And when you're working on a curve like this, it can be a little bit challenging, and you'll have to stretch it a little bit and work it in. It's called easing in is what I call it. And I might use more pins than I would, you know, on another area. But like I said, this is going to help your bag hold its shape as well as keep all your stuff from falling out of your bag. That's how you're going to pin it. And I'm going to go ahead and pin this other side. So I've got it all pinned, and I know you're probably going to ask me, how come I didn't pin them this way? And the reason is because I don't like to, really. I've been sewing for many years, and I have always pinned my pins sideways. It's just a preference. All right, so now we need to sew the liner to the bag and make it look nice and neat. And we're going to do that with some whip stitches. All right, so I've already got my thread on my needle, and of course you're using a smaller needle, the same needle that you use to sew your liner. All right, I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go ahead and take that pin out. I'm going to go underneath. The line I'm going to be following is the line on the stitch that goes across, and I'm going to stitch my whip stitches, which will go through and through the fabric along those lines. Now this would probably have looked better if I would have gone with a cream color thread for this project, but I wanted you to be able to see my stitches. So I'll probably undo this and add the cream stitches, or I might not, especially since I love this so much. I'm probably going to keep it for myself. And you can see my stitches are close together because we want this bag liner to stay in. That pin is driving me nuts. There we go. I keep getting caught on it because I put a long amount of yarn on, or thread on here so that you could see how I'm doing this without having to tie a knot. And so I've got a long thread on my needle. And basically what I'm doing is this little thing, this little line on the back of that stitch, I'm stitching 2 stitches in it. I'm stitching 1, and then I'm going to go in and go over a little bit. And I'm doing that on each one. It's not any special technique, it's just the way I like to do it. I want my stitches to be close together, so when I put my things inside and it pulls on that, that's going to stay put. Now, some people will sew crochet on their machine, and my machine will do it if I take it slow. So you can sew this with your sewing machine if you're super careful. All right, but you know what? Not everybody has a sewing machine, and I want everyone to be able to know how to add a liner to this bag. So that gives you an option to use your sewing machine or not to. All right, so I'm just going to continue working around the top of my bag and sewing my liner in place. I've completed stitching my liner in, and it fits perfectly. And like I said, I think I'm going to keep this one for me. I absolutely love how this bag turned out. I love the buttons. And it's a super fun and sturdy bag now that I have it lined. And I also think that when you can see the fabric through the holes, that it gives more dimension to the stitches used. Isn't this fun?